throughout this trial, what I've seen and what I've been heartbroken by is the corruption within the Department of Justice. And that would be the aspect of it that I just can't let go. I don't want to be focused on the mob and all that stuff, the next Bulger story type of thing. It's more the corruption, the depth of it, and how did this happen, and how do we make sure it's not happening anymore.
So you don't feel like you got answers to those questions in the trial itself?
Oh, not at all, no.
Do you know if your other jurors had that frustration, or your fellow jurors had that frustration as well?
Some of them did, yes, and verbalized it. We were about probably half and half on that some of us were pretty upset by that, and the other half understood it was there, but weren't so focused on it as we might have been.
What was it like getting up every morning for more than 2 months and driving into court and hearing the sort of things that you heard?
You just got into a routine like anything, you know, difficult, and you went in, and I guess I didn't think much about it going in. It was more in the evening that when you got out of there and you just crashed, you couldn't function. You couldn't stop thinking about it, and certainly during deliberations it was constant. You fell asleep thinking about it, you woke up thinking about it. Some of us had bad dreams, nightmares. Some of us lost quite a bit of weight during the trial and deliberation, so it affected us physically as well.
Did it affect you physically that way? Did you lose weight or lose sleep? I did lose
weight, not much of an appetite, and I did have disturbances with sleep, certainly.
Were there certain points in the trial, you know, I was there many days, but not all days, and I remember being really rattled by a lot of what I heard. Not to get you to focus on things that were unpleasant, but were there things that were particularly disturbing that you weren't able to let go when you got home?
I would say the testimonies of Materano, Flemmi, and Weeks for sure, and some of the testimony of the forensic scientists, whatnot, when they were scooping the brain matter out of that skull. I still haven't gotten, that was one of my dreams one night. And the most difficult testimonies for me, beyond the obvious three, were Morris, Fitzpatrick, and O'Neill, and I have not gotten those out of my mind.
What made their testimony so tough to watch?
Morris, his corruption, his depth of corruption, the fact that 2 men were murdered, you know, cold-bloodedly because he let information leak out. And he basically got a slap on the hand. I think it was 1 week with no pay, something ridiculous.
It was paltry.
Yes, and then he was given pay raises and, you know, promotions, and he ended up retiring from the FBI with a full pension. And it was just mind-boggling. You're sitting there thinking, how can this be happening? And he was treated by the prosecuting attorneys with utmost respect. Then you have FBI agent Fitzpatrick come in. And he was the honest FBI agent in a supervisory position who was trying to protect the men that ended up getting killed, trying to protect one in particular. He didn't know about the other one. He was a total innocent that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he was trying every way he could to keep this man in a witness protection program, fearing he would be killed. Nobody listened to him. They ended up sending this man Halloran out, who was in fact killed along with Michael Donahue. And he was a defense witness, and when the prosecuting attorney started on him, he attacked him, he vilified him, he treated him like he was the accessory to a murder. And we found out in his testimony that he was given a hard time by the FBI because he was trying to do the right thing, to the point that he felt he needed to leave the FBI, and he never received his pension. And even that, I'm sitting there, is this for real? And this has been going on for how many years that this man hasn't got a pension and the other one does? And nobody's following through on this at all? Yeah, that was just, it was absolutely appalling to me. It was disgusting. Now, Kevin O'Neill?
Yeah.
Kevin O'Neill, again, I mean, he was involved with this group to a degree, but he was arrested at one point, he told us in testimony, put in prison on trumped-up charges, even false charges, kept in prison for 11 months with no chance of being paroled because the prosecuting attorney, one of them who was involved in this case, would not allow that to happen with the judge, trumped up a murder charge against him, which after 11 months, when Kevin O'Neill finally reached a plea agreement to get out of prison and regain his life after being falsely imprisoned, in my estimation, all of a sudden, Attorney Kelly said, "Oh, we were mistaken on that charge." That was just such a violation of law, such a violation of that man's civil rights, regardless of his associations.
Did your disgust at what you heard about the government doing, did that ever make you or any other jurors inclined to not convict Bulger on at least, more of the charges that he was facing?
No, not at all. If the proof was there, if the prosecution proved it, then we were in agreement to find it proven. If there was not enough evidence put forth by the prosecution, we came up with the not proven, which didn't mean to any of us that he wasn't necessarily guilty. It was just they didn't put enough effort into that portion of the trial to make us say beyond a reasonable doubt that it was proven.
You just alluded to the non-finding on Deborah Davis's murder.
Yes.
Stephen Davis and other family members of Bulger's alleged victims were a regular presence in the courtroom, and I'm wondering how aware you and the other jurors were of them there, and what effect, if any, they had on your deliberations.
We were very aware of them. On the deliberations, nothing in that we came to the conclusions we came to based on what was presented to us. With the verdict itself and after the fact, perhaps, we feel badly for the families that we couldn't find a proving on. We understand how upset they were. We heard them cry out in the courtroom, and it really did disturb us. As the verdict was being read out, many of us, the men, the women, we talked about it after, were literally shaking, tears, sick to our stomach. We understood, but what I've wanted to say to the families in interviews is that it didn't mean it didn't happen. It didn't mean Whitey Bulger wasn't involved in your loved one's death. It just meant the prosecution in those instances did not give us enough to go by, other than the testimonies of 3 criminals who often contradicted one another.
What's it like to know that nowadays the federal government has to partner with individuals like Stephen Fleming or John Martirano or Kevin Weeks to get other bad guys behind bars?
I don't. It's disgusting, as I said. It's just disillusioning to me. I just wish they could go back to just going after these guys individually, punishing them for what they did, and moving on to the next one. How do you justify putting all this effort into going after James Bulger by letting somebody like John Martirano walk the streets? 20 cold-blooded murders that he confessed to as if it was swatting a mosquito on your arm. And he got less than a year for each of those murders. What about the families of those victims? Where was justice for them? And he's out walking the streets, and the excuse is, oh, we wanted to get Bulger. Really? Is Bulger that much more guilty than Martirano was? How do you balance that scale? It's just beyond comprehension for me. I don't understand.
Janet Uhlar, thank you for sitting down with us today, and thank you for your service on the jury this summer.
Thank you, and you're welcome.